and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be talking about how to cover a blunder. Ooh, my goodness. I'll tell you something. No matter how much you rehearse, no matter how much you get out there and perform, someday, sometime, at some point, Murphy's Law is going to hit you. It's going to hit you. And something's going to go wrong, and how you handle that is going to make the difference between entertaining your audience and having a great time with your audience and having your audience feel really terrible that you're there. I mean, it really is how you handle a blunder is probably one of the distinguishing features of a professional. An amateur gets embarrassed, gets flustered, gets frustrated. The audience feels that emotion, and it just ruins the experience for them. A professional is gracious and handles it with grace and dignity, and that's what you do in a nutshell. Now let me give you some examples here. David Copperfield. I was when he toured. Now I think he's in Vegas now. I don't get to Vegas. I don't see. But he used to do an annual show, and then he would take that annual show and do a couple of his classics, and he would tour the country with this show. And I saw him dozens of times at the local theater here, and I can remember two blunders that I saw him make. One, he injured himself in the death saw illusion where the saw comes down and splits him in half. There's a point in the illusion where he presses up, and the mechanism did not let go, and he pulled a muscle, and he was visibly injured. But he went on with the show and handled that with grace. I mean, you wouldn't accept that he was. You could see that he was in pain. Nothing else changed. His patter was friendly. His humor was spot on. His magic was spot on. Nothing else was different. There was another time I'm watching Copperfield. This is another show entirely. And he did this. There's a television camera and a cameraman operating it. And the camera and the cameraman are put into a box, and it vanishes. The camera and the cameraman vanish, and they reappear somewhere else. Pretty cool illusion. Well, part of the illusion was you were watching a monitor, and you're seeing what the camera is seeing. And so you see like static when it vanishes, and then you see the image of the camera from somewhere else on the monitor. So that's pretty cool. Well, in this particular instance, the camera wasn't working. So you weren't seeing the image. Now, it didn't matter. It really didn't matter, because the trick was that the camera and the cameraman disappeared from one place and reappeared somewhere else. And that worked. But David was frustrated that the camera wasn't working. And so he's on stage live troubleshooting. Well, did you put what's going, and he's doing this, and I'm thinking, you got to be really comfortable on stage to not only admit that something went wrong, but to try to fix it in front of everybody. I was impressed. I was impressed by that. I really was. Doug Henning. I never saw Doug Henning live, but I never missed a show. I never missed a single television show that he ever did. And Doug Henning loved to perform live. He loved to perform live. He thought it was very important that there was no possibility of a camera trick. And so he made a big deal of saying, I'm performing live. Well, when you perform live, there was one time when he was set up to do a large animal production at the end of his show. He was going to produce all kinds of different animals. And the lions got loose and ate the animals. Right there during the show. It wasn't, you didn't see that, but it happened, and Doug had to cover for it. There was another time when Doug stepped the wrong way, and he literally fell into a trap that's used to make the illusion work. He stumbled out of it and kept going, and unless you're savvy about magic and you understand magic's methods and so on, you probably didn't even notice that he did that. My point is that the best magicians in the world have made blunders in front of their audiences, and the audience may have been aware on some level, but it wasn't a big deal. The performer didn't make a big deal of it, and the audience didn't make a big deal of it. Now, what have I done? I'll tell you my biggest problem, and I continue to do this. I do it over and over again because my focus, I'm so focused on my audience and on interacting with them and talking to them and that dynamic that I often forget that I'm doing a magic trick. I know this sounds crazy, but I've been doing jumbo Monties, and I'm having fun with the audience, and I'm talking, and I'm laughing, and having a good time, and I lose track of my sequence, and I'm like, what? And I end up turning up the wrong card because I lost a sequence. I've done that. I've even done the spot card. Like, I'm doing the spot card, and I'm talking, I'm having a good time, and I turn around the wrong way, and it happens that way. What did I do? Well, sometimes I just laugh it off, laugh it off. And so there are a few times when I go out to perform and something is set wrong, and I pick it up and I know it's set wrong, and I have literally reset the trick in front of audience members and just kept on going. And now did they notice? Did they know I did that? Well, there's a few things I want to give you, a few tips, if you will, that I think will make this easier. Number one, keep your method simple so you can concentrate on the presentation. I mean, if you do that, anything can go wrong with anything. You can do the simplest trick in the world and screw it up. But the fact is, if you're having to concentrate on method, you're 2 steps behind to begin with. You don't want to have to be worried about method. Now, maybe your answer is, well, I like to do very difficult manipulations, but I rehearse and I practice so much that it's second nature. Absolutely, you should. Absolutely. But you really want to make sure that method is not an issue. So whether you rehearse and practice or you just choose simple methods, that's going to help. Number 2, avoid being flustered or embarrassed. At all costs, avoid being flustered or embarrassed. Why? The audience feels for you. They have empathy for you. And if you're in pain, they're in pain. So the last thing you want to do is to communicate embarrassment or being flustered. They'll get uncomfortable, and the show just is damaged by that. So that's the last thing you want to do. Third, your first responsibility is to entertain. Create joy. Your first responsibility is to entertain. If you have to, make the blunder entertaining. Laugh at yourself. Laugh at yourself. I love Carl Ballantine. There's a point in the act where something appears to go wrong, right? He's pulling, and something appears to go wrong, and he looks off to the side of the stage, and he says, "Okay, who's been messing with the props?" It's hysterical. It's Carl Ballantine's line, but use it. Something goes wrong. All right, who's been messing with the props? I mean, it's a funny line, and it's a great line to use in that moment if, there's really no other way out. I prefer just to reset the trick. Just a reset start. That's what I like to do. Finally, remember something very important. If you haven't completed the trick yet, if you haven't set it up yet, the audience doesn't know what you're going to do. So when you perceive you've blundered, the audience may not have any idea that you've blundered. I think that's very important. You should always keep that in mind, that the audience doesn't know what the outcome was going to be. So So don't make an issue of it. Don't make an issue of it. They might never know. Take your time, relax, reset the prop if you need to. Go on to something else if you need to. They don't know. They don't know. Just move on. Folks, those are my 2 cents on how to cover a blunder. I would love to hear your comments about this. I'm sure you have other ideas that I didn't mention. Please comment down below. Please share those ideas. They're very valuable. Please subscribe if you've not done so already. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great day.